This morning's passage is from the book of Isaiah. It's in your bulletin on page 4 if you'd like to follow along. Who has measured the waters in the hollow of his hand, and marked off the heavens with a span, and closed the dust of the earth in a measure, and weighed the mountains in scales and the hills in a balance? Who has directed the Spirit of the Lord, or as his counselor has instructed him? Whom did he consult for his enlightenment, and who taught him the path of justice? Who taught him knowledge and showed him the way of understanding? Even the nations are like a drop from a bucket and are accounted as dust on the scales. See, he takes up the isles like fine dust. Lebanon would not provide fuel enough, nor are its animals enough for a burnt offering. All the nations are as nothing before him. They are accounted by him as less than nothing and emptiness. To whom then will you liken God, or what likeness compare with him? An idol? A workman casts it, and a goldsmith overlays it with gold and casts for it silver chains. As a gift one chooses mulberry wood, wood that will not rot, then seeks out a skilled artisans to set up an image that will not topple. Have you not known? Have you not heard? Has it not been told you from the beginning? Have you not understood from the foundations of the earth? It is he who sits above the circle of the earth, and its inhabitants are like grasshoppers, who stretches out the heaven like a curtain and spreads them like a tent to live in, who brings princes to naught and makes the rulers of the earth as nothing. Scarcely are they planted, scarcely sown, scarcely has their stem taken root in the earth, when he blows upon them and they wither, and the tempest carries them off like stubble.
Please join me in a spirit of prayer. May the words of my mouth and the meditations of our hearts be found acceptable before you, O God, our rock and our Redeemer. Amen. Well, if you read my bio, it was a little long in the bulletin, then you know that I'm a retired biblical scholar. So I study texts, right? So I'm not going to wander around as I preach because I'm kind of glued to the text, if you don't mind that. And I also may tend to be a little nerdy. So I guess just, be prepared for that. Where do you find hope in difficult times? When I was a teenager, I think I was naturally a pretty hopeful girl, a characteristic that my mother found annoying. So annoying, in fact, that my mother sometimes called me Pollyanna, and I don't think she meant it in a positive way. Nonetheless, like many, I have struggled with depression from time to time because of life circumstances or because of my own misguided expectations about life. When I was able to achieve my own goals, though, I became more secure. Yet lately, the things I've counted on that seemed solid are now at risk. In spite of the concern I have for stability that seems to be illusory, I try to have hope. As I get older, I have learned to cultivate being hopeful because it helps me to keep a stable mindset during turbulent times. However, to repeat, where do you find hope in difficult times? Some find hope within their families, with a sibling who is supportive and patient. Others find hope in planning for possible contingencies or in saving money for emergencies that may arise later. Still others may find hope in living in a stable community, one where neighbors are always here to help. If you are like me, perhaps you have found hope in the passages of the Bible, in a message that conveys a loving God who cares. If circumstances are unusually difficult and the path forward is hidden, it may be especially hard to find hope. Well, take today's sermon passage, Isaiah 40, verses 12 through 24. It is thought by many biblical scholars to have been written at the end of the Babylonian exile. Earlier, the people of Judah had been conquered in a brutal way by the Babylonians, who destroyed their temple, the palace, and ravaged the countryside of Judah. Then, many of the people of Judah, especially leaders of the community, were removed from their homes and required to live in exile for many years. The exile lasted at least 47 years. Only when Babylon was conquered by the Persians were the people allowed to return to Judah. They had spent 47 long years hoping for a reprieve. Many had almost given up hope. Yet these were the circumstances which the prophet Isaiah intended to address toward the end of that long period of living in a foreign land. The chapters of 40 through 55 of Isaiah offer comforting words to a people in exile, to people who no longer felt hopeful. These chapters reflect the work of a prophet who wanted to uplift people from their darkness of soul. What were the insights that the prophet gave the people? Isaiah points to God for rescue. The prophet turns to God's creative power to comfort the people. According to the prophet, God has measured and weighed the features of the landscape, crafting them according to divine plan. The waters of the sea, the heavens, the mountains and hills. The prophet argues that God keeps his or her own counsel. No human has been able to advise God. The prophet suggests that God is so powerful that God's perspective of the nations is to see them as a drop in the bucket or dust on a scale. God can exercise power over the nations. They are like nothing to God. God can reshape nations according to new standards, always willing to enact the new thing. Through rhetorical means, the prophet reminds the reader that there is no one comparable to God. The prophet states, "Have you not known? Have you not heard? Has it not been told you from the beginning? Have you not understood the foundations of the earth?" The prophet reminds the people that God has stretched out the heavens and God deals with the potentates in the world. The timing may not be ideal from the exile's point of view, but God is in charge of all things. God can bring down wicked foreign rulers with ease. Isaiah 40 extols God's power and encourages the people to place their hope and trust in the powerful God of creation. According to the prophet, God can merely blow air on the oppressive rulers and wither the authorities in their wickedness and destruction. Isaiah says the exiled people of Judah should put their trust in their formidable God. After Isaiah's reassuring speeches that occur several times through chapters 40 through 55, the people of Judah witness a regime change of great historical significance. The great empire of Persia defeats Babylon for control over the ancient Near East. Though the people of God remain oppressed again under an overbearing great empire, the Persians at least allow them to return home to Judah. Because the Persians are more lenient in some ways than the Babylonians with their brutal tactics, the people begin their long journey home. However, imagine the circumstances of making their way back mostly on foot, with a few camels serving as pack animals. The distance from Babylon to Jerusalem is approximately 550 miles. This would be roughly equivalent to walking from Sanibel to Charleston, South Carolina. The terrain was rough in some places through dry desert country or mountainous terrain. Wide and deep rivers needed to be crossed. Though the journey was difficult, many people of God made their way home, though many also stayed in Babylon to live. So some of us may feel depressed or inept to address current circumstances in our world, such as climate change accompanied by deadly storms, world politics that threaten the well-being of the vulnerable, long-ranging wars between nations and rising anti-Semitism. We may all feel helpless in the face of life's challenges. Yet Isaiah persuades us to put our trust in the God of creation. Our God is extraordinarily capable and compassionate. The covenant commitment to God's people is everlasting. Excuse me. Like the people of Judah, waiting for God to act can be difficult. But meanwhile, we can seek to follow God's guidance in the interim. It is good to see ourselves as partners with God as we attempt to answer God's call. During the time we wait for God to usher in divine justice, we as a group can work for justice on earth, for the climate, for nature, for the marginalized, for the vulnerable, and for all of God's people. However, to empower and uplift our partnership work, we need to find ways to draw upon hope, to find it in our own midst. Several times over the last 8 years or so, the Green Team at First Congregational Church in Sarasota, my home church, has sponsored nature, spiritual walks at various parks and preserves in the area. Our leader would lead us on meandering paths, wandering through the forests and fields, by rivers and lakes. He would pause on occasion and read a devotional, one that had spiritual insights, but also interwoven with the habitat. Helping us to identify native plants, Bill also would help us to see which plants appealed to the wildlife. Those nature walks were very healing and gave us the sense of being connected to the plants, animals, and birds we saw. These walks helped me to feel rooted on the ground, on which we walked. After these walks, I felt healed and refreshed. As a member of our church's green team, one of the activities that is most relaxing for me is spending time watering or weeding our butterfly garden. 2 others in the church and I spent a lot of time converting the butterfly garden to native plants. These plants appeal to our local pollinators, so when I weed or water, I often encounter different kinds of butterflies: Gulf fritillary, zebra longwing, giant swallowtail, and most exciting recently, an atala. The atala is a rare butterfly that was once thought to have gone extinct, but this type of butterfly is making a comeback. Our congregation was able to see a swarm of these butterflies when leaving the church. It gave me joy that what we had planted had helped the atala find a place to stay for a time. It was an event that gave me hope, and to see that our work in the garden was paying off. As the Bible makes clear in several places, wisdom and hope can be found in nature. If we spend some time there and listen carefully to what the birds, the brooks, and the bogs tell us, we will have a sense of calm that makes the wait for God to act easier for ourselves. In nature, there is reassurance and the presence of God. There we can quietly seek to follow God's path. If we are patient, we will feel when we are on the path that God has set for us. We will feel an inner confidence that we are headed the right way and representing God's loving kindness. In nature, we may feel a closer kinship with the creatures that share the earth with us, and that we are an integral part of the world that the powerful and compassionate God has put in place. When we look for hope, actually we can turn to nature for hope and reassurance. I am reminded of a wonderful poem by Wendell Berry called "The Peace of Wild Things." I quote that now. "When despair for the world grows in me, and I wake in the night at the least sound, in fear of what my life and my children's lives may be, I go and lie down where the wood drake rests in his beauty on the water, and the great heron feeds. I come into the peace of wild things, who do not tax their lives with forethought of grief. I come into the presence of still water, and I feel above me the day-blind stars waiting with their light. For a time, I rest in the grace of the world and am free." Amen.